Hey everyone, let's talk about Cambodia, a country in Southeast Asia. Lots of different people live there, including groups called indigenous peoples. This means they were living in Cambodia long before anyone else. The Khi, Chong, and Bunong are three groups of Khmer Indigenous peoples. They've been in Cambodia for ages. Their lives are deeply connected to the land. The Khi, Chong, and Bunong have their own languages, cultures, traditions, and beliefs. Sadly, these groups face big challenges today. They're losing their land and being forced from their homes. Their culture and way of life are in danger. These are serious problems that threaten the survival of the Khmer Indigenous peoples. We need to understand these problems and support their rights. These communities depend on the land to live. They farm and gather food from the forests. They also have special places in nature that are important to their beliefs. Today, the Khmer Indigenous peoples are facing many difficulties. These difficulties are hurting their communities and their way of life. The situation is critical. They are losing their land and their way of life. It's important to listen to their stories and support their rights and their future. One big problem is land dispossession. That's a fancy way of saying someone is taking land away from someone else. Sadly, this is happening to the Khmer Indigenous peoples. Powerful people and companies want their land for things like mining, farming, or other businesses. The indigenous peoples are often forced off their land. Forced evictions are another serious problem. This is when people are forced to leave their homes, sometimes with threats or by being physically removed. This is happening to indigenous communities in Cambodia. They are being evicted for development projects that often benefit rich people or companies. For example, the Southern Cardamom Red Plus project, which was supposed to protect forests, ended up forcing Chong communities off their land. The Chong weren't asked about the project and had no say in what happened to their land. That's not fair and violates their rights. Another example is the Keo Sema Red Plus project. This project has also caused land conflicts. The Bunong people have been arrested for farming on their own land. Their land rights have been ignored. These are just two examples of the unfairness faced by Khmer Indigenous peoples. Deforestation is a huge problem in Cambodia. Trees are being cut down super fast because of illegal logging and farms taking over more land. This hurts indigenous peoples. It destroys their way of life and their culture. For example, the Khi people rely on the forest to make a living. They collect resin from trees to make incense and other things. But illegal logging is destroying the trees they need. Deforestation also hurts indigenous people's spiritual beliefs. They have a deep connection to the land and believe spirits live in the forests and rivers. When these places are destroyed, it hurts their beliefs and traditions. Losing the forests also means losing traditional knowledge. Indigenous peoples know a lot about plants, animals, and the environment. This knowledge is passed down through families, but deforestation is making this valuable knowledge disappear. The Khmer Indigenous peoples are in a tough spot. They're losing their land, their culture, and their way of life. It's super important to recognize their rights and protect them. The Cambodian government needs to protect the rights of its indigenous peoples. Something called Free, Prior, and Informed Consent, or FPIC, is really important. FPIC means indigenous peoples have the right to say yes or no to projects that affect their lands and resources. The Cambodian government must respect FPIC and make sure indigenous communities are asked and involved in decisions. International organizations and the rest of the world also need to help. They can give money for community projects and speak up for their rights. The future of the Khmer Indigenous peoples depends on fairness and recognition. Their voices need to be heard, and their rights need to be protected.